Well, trying to get onto a routine of a schedule, I had forgotten. I forgot you guys were off last Monday, so we didn't do our press conference on a Monday. Some of us labor on Labor Day. No disrespect. So this caught me a little bit off guard. I thought we were Tuesdays. But no, I think obviously just recapping from last week, a little bit probably what I thought as I talked a little bit after the game. In particular, the first half, it was just not a very clean half of football. I think on both sides. Ultimately, for the game, defensively, I think we had 11 series and only ended up with 3 and outs maybe. And I think that's where some of that bigger difference came even in the first half. And then obviously offensively in the first half didn't play real clean, had 5 drives, really scored on 2 of them. You take away what you can't, the last 2-minute situation. I think we're probably not feeling great, but we're in a good position as you go into halftime to make some adjustments and come out and play the way we did the second half. So there's some real positives. I think we had 13 explosive plays, which was the most I think we've had since we've been here for the last few years. And so we were able to get the ball, move the ball around, create some things, made some good adjustments, and did some things in the second half to make things, obviously roll a little bit more. And it's amazing how the momentum of things can happen. But as you go back and look at it, I think Danny did a really good job. I think we only had a few incompletions, and those in particular might have been things that were rushed and more open for him. But all in all, what we asked him to do, I think he did a really good job of, and was happy after evaluating the game film and watching and seeing the decisions he made, where he threw the football, how he threw the football, with the exception, like I said, to a few decisions on, they weren't bad. I mean, obviously the play right before half that ended up getting intercepted, but I think the only other ones that come up is maybe some of the bubble throws out there that you would probably not want to throw. Other than that, he actually played a pretty clean game for us. So that's exciting that moving forward. I don't know a whole lot about Billy before you ask. It's a Monday, so we'll see as we continue to push forward in the week. But we'll get obviously prepared either way.
Just a quick one on Billy. Is he doing more physically as you've gotten further away from the injury, or where's he kind of at in terms of what he can do?
Yeah, I mean, he's throwing the ball around. He's here constantly getting treatments and things like that. I think it's going to be, where he really feels as we get later towards the week. Whether it's, we're going to have to protect Billy from himself. I know that at some point in time. I don't know when that is, but he's a guy that's going to be prepared and always wants to go.
Luke, so far, third down on defense has been pretty, successful for you guys. What have you seen in that regard? What kind of stands out to you in terms of what's kind of, fueling some of this early success?
Well, I don't have the stats. I know that obviously in week 1 we were really good. Last week, pretty darn good as well. I can think of a scramble here and there for one of the little bit longer ones. I think there's a combination. I think it's pretty easy to say. We've got some edge rushes and we've got some depth. We can move some things and mix some things and get some guys in there that give us a chance to win some one-on-ones. I think that's where it starts with. It's also trying to figure out as you get into a game what's the best thing for you, right? Is it to bring 5? Is it to bring 6? Is it allowed to bring 4? Is twisting? Is going straight? So I think that as a combination of all those things together, giving us a better opportunity, a chance as we got into games to see what actually is working. We know right now the 4-man rush and the guys on the edges give us a little bit of a different dynamic, and I think that's where we start. But we've got to be able to mix some things up, and I think that's where the coaches have done a pretty good job of having a combination of bringing 4, 5, 6, and even at times just 3, and let them get guys off of spots.
Coach, you had talked about some of the explosives. Lance Mason had a couple of those big plays. Just how much can his speed and athleticism make an impact in the passing game?
I think there's a combination of things there for Lance. I think obviously not just his ability to run. I think that his ability to get open. I think he won on some man-to-man coverage stuff. He obviously made a play down the field on a deep ball that was right there down to the 1 or 2 yard line. He had one out in the open space where almost probably breaks one to maybe take that thing a lot further. I just think that there's a combination of things that Lance gives us an opportunity to use. And it's not just speed, it's not just ability to catch. His versatility, I think, at least makes him a little bit more difficult to say, hey, this guy isn't just in there to catch balls. He's really kind of grown since he's walked in the door here. He's kind of a complete guy right now. And so he's every bit as part of the blocking in the run game, at the point of attack, on pulls and counters and kickouts, as well as he is, I think, down the field in the passing game as well. So I think the best thing he's brought is versatility to us.
Hey, Luke, I know it's still very early, but a little more time to just go back and look at the film. What stood out about really that entire right side, those young guys that I know are very close, Colin Coverley, Emerson Mandel?
Yeah.
Where would you like to continue to see growth to?
Oh, there's no doubt. I mean, we know that that's what excites you, right? I mean, when you've got some young guys, it's obviously nerve-wracking as well, and but it's exciting too to see those guys, because you know that there's going to be a growth every day, every week. Sometimes you gotta live with some of those things, but I think we saw enough in last week's game to say, hey, this is what the future looks like, and those guys and their ability to work together is going to be a really good thing. And so there's definitely some mistakes. I think that anytime you have some new guys in positions, I think there were some mistakes to the other side too, where you got two really veteran guys that just haven't played side by side a whole lot. So I think that's the unique thing about the offensive line. We talk about the defensive line and what do you like about what those guys is. It's the multiplicity. It's be able to move guys, the Darrell Peterson, they can play on the edge, he can play inside, he can play head up over the center. The thing about the offensive line is getting them into positions where they can get consistent, they can get a feel for one another. That's so much more about guys working in unison. And so, there was obviously some things we got to do a lot better on both sides of it. But I think for those young guys, there's just a lot of promise in the future of where we're headed.
Luke, you were asked about scheduling, non-conference scheduling last week, and you said you kind of got to do what's best for your team. Is the tricky part that answer might be different each year, right? Like sometimes you might.
Yeah, I think that's where you just got to look at it, right? I mean, and the thing about it is you're not scheduled. This isn't, I don't know basketball, but I think they can kind of, schedule a year out or even 6 to 8 months out from what I understand. That's not the case in football. So I think that, it's not an easy thing, but you got to look at it and say, hey, what's going to be best for us for the whole? We know this. The Big Ten is not like it's going to take a dip. I'm not saying that there couldn't be more teams in the Big Ten. Who knows? But I can assure you there's not going to be less. And we're not going to lose any of the power that is in here right now. And so I just think that everybody's going to have to figure this thing out. I think the good thing is you see both conferences going to where we are with 9 league games. I think it's going to allow for some more consistency. There's not going to be any mandates, I'm sure, as we've seen in college football. Every time you think there's going to be some rule put in place, like everybody has to play X amount, I think you really just got to make sure, hey, what's going to be the best fit for us as we continue to move and grow what it is that we're doing.
I know there's a question mark if he's going to play, but when you face a receiver like Ryan Williams, just what does he do to a defense? Just you see the talent and the speed and everything, but what's he do to a defense when you're trying to cover a guy like that?
Oh, it's a hard look to simulate. Let's just start there, because it's not like you've got a bunch of those guys that we can put in there to say, hey, we're gonna simulate the speed. But his versatility, I think the way they move him around is where even seeing the growth from last year to game one. Again, we got to prepare like he's going to be there. I would assume that he's going to be there, but also you can put too much of a focus on things like that too. So I think there's a balance. It's not like the other guys are guys that you don't have to worry about, or guys you wouldn't like to some way somehow double cover or have some in and outs on. So I think you got to be able to do the things that you do, but you got to also be aware of the different things that in particular he brings.
Luke, I know there's been roster changes, there have been scheme changes, but is there anything that you see differently from your Wisconsin team, this year heading into Alabama compared to last year?
Yeah, there is. There's a lot of things. I think that hopefully first and foremost, it has a lot to do with the team. And say individuals here or there, but the truth of the matter is it's gonna, the thing that I feel best about, and I think that I know that the entire program and the guys within that locker room feel the best about is I think just, what we have as a group, and whether everybody's seen it yet or hasn't seen it yet, whether it's game 1 or game 2. I just think that the biggest difference is, hey, there's some different mentality of the things that we can do and what we know we need to do. And I think that's where it's got to kind of start. Is there some different spots and positions? Yes. I've said it, multiple times. I think that, for the most part, I think we're in a better place at every position. I think obviously the depth on the offensive line is the one spot that, that continues to, be an issue or stand out a little bit to you. But as a whole and as a team, I think where we are and the things that we're doing, I think that's where everything's got to start.
As far as Brandon Lane goes, he's playing more this year. As far as some of the defensive changes you guys have made, what maybe fits his skill set better this year than last year, and how key is it for a guy like that to stay patient when he kind of comes in and it's a transfer?
Well, there's a lot of answers there. I don't think that it's a scheme thing that's different. The truth of the matter is there's a maturity, there's a growth that sometimes people don't see or wait for in college football. Even a guy like Brandon, he's done an unbelievable job from, to me, where he was at this time last year and to where he is right now. And I can only credit Brandon's maturity for that. His ability to stick things out, his ability to, come in here and maybe things didn't go exactly the way he had planned. It's easy for people to point a finger at the scheme. Well, it just wasn't quite the right scheme for me, as opposed to saying, hey, there's a lot of growth that I have to do. And I can say that that's what Brandon has done a really good job of. He was a big guy last year. He was a big guy last year that could move. He was a big guy that I don't know, just didn't fit as well and maybe as confident in the things that he was doing, and he is in a completely different place now. We saw it kind of start in spring football, and it really translated over into fall camp. He had a little setback with an injury, but that's where I think some of the maturity of what he's shown has really been impressive, is his ability to kind of play through that injury, miss some time, but never kind of waver in his growth and the things he's done. So it's a credit to Brandon. It's not a scheme thing. It's a credit to him and his dedication.
Coach, is there any update on Jake Renfro's status? And on top of that, how do you assess Kerry Kadanko's performance and areas of improvement if he needs to play again this week?
Well, we don't know a whole lot about Jake. It's Monday, so we'll figure out some things as we get to Tuesday's practice. As for Kerry, I think we said it after the game. We know there were some issues. There's some things that stand out. Snaps are the very first thing. It was Kerry's first time really playing, first time starting for sure. Here's a 6-year guy that has been in the system, has been in the program, and I expect nothing but things to continue to get better for him. He actually battled a lot of injuries and missed a good amount of time, I think, in fall camp as well. And so, when Jake was down a little bit, he filled in there. Then he missed a little bit of time, which, probably would have been something that would have been really, really good opportunities and, for him to be in there with the ones and playing a lot more. So he's had to take some of those steps here, in particular in this past game. So I expect nothing but a continued growth from Kerry. He's a mature guy. He's been here for a long time. He's got incredible pride in the things that he's doing, and he knows that. We were walking in off the field last week during the game, after the game, and the first thing he said was, "Coach, I got to get a lot better." And I said, "I have no doubt that you will, but we got our first one under the belt. Now let's move forward."
Luke, is there anything you can do this week to simulate the stadium environment? I know it's an early game, and they always complain about that down there, but how do you?
What do they complain? I didn't know that.
They don't like early games.
Okay.
They get really mad about them.
Well,
But,
good.
Is there anything you
I don't
can
think they
simulate
asked
that?
us what time we wanted to play, though. Yes. I mean, we're going to play the music. We'll be prepared better than we were last year when we went to Iowa. That's what I can truly say. And that might have been one of those ones that, I don't say it caught you off guard, but it was maybe even louder than what we had expected. And I know that we had a plan going in there. It was more of a third down plan. It wasn't a first and second down plan, but then we had to adjust. It was one of those things, that we'll never be in that position again. So all week we'll be, going with some different cadence things and put a little bit more on the guys up front to make sure we're all on the same page. We started that last night in our Sunday practice. Can you really get the noise as loud as it's going to be on Saturday? I don't think we can, but we'll surely try.
Obviously, a lot of talk about the redshirt freshman class after Saturday today with the offensive line. Was there a point during this offseason where it felt like that class was maybe ready to take that next step? And how do you prepare them for something like this?
Yeah, it's no. I don't know that there was any one thing that say this group of guys is ready. It's in some ways you might be saying they're thrown in there a little bit sooner than maybe they should, but that's how you grow up, and that's all part of taking your opportunities and running with them. I think we've all seen that here in the past, just in even in my time. I think back to Tanner Borelati. I wasn't here with him, but all of a sudden he's thrown in the mix. I heard as a very, very young guy that had no business being in there, and look what it did for him. And he left. He was able to leave early, and what he was prepared for. And so I think these guys are the same way. There's more of those guys that are thrown in the mix. It's not just the 2 offensive linemen that are starting. There's some defensive guys that have been thrown in the mix a lot too. Now they're not starters, whether it's Cairo on the outside or Cooper Catalano or Mason Post or some of those guys. Tommy Heiberger is a redshirt freshman. There's a lot of those guys that are right there in that position that, as a coach, no, you're sitting there saying, boy, I hope we can give them another 6 months or 6 games to grow up and mature, but you never know how that's going to happen. And those guys have got to be ready, and they will grow immensely. It's just some things that you got to be able to grow through together. And so we're seeing it a little bit more from those guys up front, but that's the exciting part about it. You're seeing guys grow and knowing what it's going to look like as we continue to push forward.
Hey, Coach, still early in the week, but what's the excitement and preparation you feel and your team feels for hitting the road for the first time this year at a program like Alabama?
Well, this is one of those ones that I know guys, had circled for many reasons, right? Obviously, the way things went last year, but also for the idea of look, there's nothing more that you want to do as a competitor than be in the biggest games and the biggest competition out there, and to go to Alabama to play in front of that crowd, to go down there to play, in the SEC country. I think that there's not a guy within our program that doesn't say that's one of the reasons why they're here. And so it's only Monday, and we haven't seen what that actually looks like as you go out to practice. But where last week, on a Monday and a Tuesday, there was a coach that was prodding guys and making sure they understood the urgency and the things that we had to be able to do every single day in practice. That won't be the case this week. So that's sometimes the thing about coaching. You kind of recognize when you really got to get the prod out and when you got to kind of, even step back and let these guys kind of be the leaders that they are and be the emotions that they are and have the week that they will. And so this is one of those ones, there's no doubt that these guys are going to be excited about.
Coach, you mentioned in your post-game press conference that at the moment you didn't feel this team was ready for the big games or the gauntlet coming up on the schedule. What needs to happen, whether it be this week at practice or this week at Alabama, for you to feel that this team is ready for the rest of the schedule?
Well, it doesn't matter how I feel. The truth of the matter is we got to get ready. And, all I can say is, from last week's performance, in particular in the first half, it just wasn't as clean as we needed to be for what we wanted. And I didn't say score more points. I didn't say get more stops. I didn't say get more turnovers. I just mean the fact of, hey, when we take the field, are we playing to the level at which we want to play and executing to the level at which we want to play? And that's where that whole idea of that mid-season form we wanted to be able to see. And we saw some things of that in game one. I don't know that we saw quite what we're talking about in game two. But that's where the process, that's where the journey, that's where every single week is about building and getting better. And so we'll be ready. I know that, mentally and physically, but we got to go out there and be able to execute and do the things that we expect to do. And so a lot of things go into that. I know it won't be a lack of preparation. It won't be a lack of focus. We've already talked about that. I mean, it's not like there's going to be some speech that needs to be had on a Tuesday to get guys fired up to prepare for this one. It's just the ability to say, hey, now when you get to that moment at 11 o'clock, can you have the calmness, can you have the patience about yourself to go out and execute like you have all week and you have all through fall camp, with the expectations that are in front of you.
When you have a tough situation going on with Nazir, and kind of adds a different element when you go on the road with that, where you're kind of waiting, like a decision can come at any time. Like, do you plan on traveling Nazir this week, or how do you handle that?
I'm probably going to steer clear of commenting or saying a whole lot on that, just to keep my opinions and some of the things to myself. So I'll just tell you this: it's I feel really bad for the kid. I can't handle it emotionally to talk about it. I don't know how he is handling it, and we'll just leave it at that.
Any other questions?
Good. Thanks.